Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge, episode number 54 big episodes of the Stratosphere Lounge, and I'm your host, Bill Whittle. Welcome to the first Stratosphere Lounge of 2014, which I predict is going to be the year that we run these people into the river. And we'll get a chance to talk about that, I guess, on Friday, tomorrow. That's the name of the new Afterburner, and I haven't put it up yet, but we'll put it up first thing in the morning, and it's about time we got a little revenge on these people, I think. I really do think it's going to be a remarkable year, and I think it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse for these people. And we will have a chance to talk about that, because that's what the show's all about. So, as usual, if you're new here, I suppose it's always a possibility that somebody's new after 54 episodes. We put the questions up on the at the Facebook page in the afternoon of the show. I usually do it on a Tuesday or Wednesday. Been doing Thursday or Friday lately because with the holidays and stuff, it's kind of made it a little crazy. And we've been taking the most popular questions. We let the audience kind of rate them. I've been doing that a while lately. It seems fair. And to be honest with you, it saves me a little work. Saves me a little bit of work. I just have to go through and take them, and it also means I don't self-select questions too. So that's the news there, and it's been a great year. I had a great New Year. I hope you guys did too. It was probably the most fun New Year I've had in a long, long time, maybe ever. It was really terrific. I got that question coming up, so I'll talk about that in a little more detail. I did want to say one thing out there for those of you who are subscribers, and I won't make this real long because I know it's a percentage of the people that watch this show. But there are teething problems, and then there are, swallow a bowling ball kind of teething problems. And actually, I think since we spoke last on our last week's episode, I found found a folder full of emails that went unanswered. I basically handed off the merchandising and the customer relations to some staff member so that I could concentrate on the content. But it's my website, and it's got my name on it, and our customer relations and customer service has been just appalling. I'm finding out now, that we have a number of questions that went unanswered. We have a product that got shipped and was really poorly packed by a third party, and things got out there broken. And so I just want those of you who are members to know that if you haven't gotten an email from me already, we're going to go through every single one of these orders and make sure people got what they paid for. And I also got a couple days ago, I think like the 31st, I got finally the final installments of the Your Government DVD from the compositor. We shot those on a green screen in a studio with me in front of a green background. The desk was practical desk. I think we've got a picture of it here, just so you can see. Yep. And so that is me, and the desk and the flags are real, and the first set of curtains are real, and everything else after that is fake. It's done by a compositor, a really terrifically talented guy. But we were supposed to have the last of the segments back in by October 15th, and we got them back on December 30th. So we are 2 months late with those DVDs, and everyone who's a member is going to get that notice too. I didn't know when. I couldn't even put up when they'll be ready because I didn't know. They were so far behind and just kept dragging more behind that I couldn't even make an estimate. But now that we've got them in-house, I have to probably spend about 5, 6, 7 days doing the finishing work on getting the last segments together and audio balanced and all that other stuff. Then probably another 4 or 5 days for the DVD mastering to turn it around. So realistically, I expect to have them in my hands ready to ship by the end of January. So for those of you who've already bought them, you will receive a personal apology from me about the delay, and consider this one too, please. It was just out of my hands, and it was one of those things where you're working with an individual, and he's just working as fast as he can. Other things came up, and there's no whip that I could crack that I didn't crack. So anyway, awful sorry about the delays on the DVDs, but we do have all the elements now, which means they're in our hands. And for those of you who got your product late, apologies on that. If you had something that was broken, we're going to get that fixed. And we have it in the back here. We got a bunch of these. To my undying chagrin, it's not been a good week for me in terms of some of the oversights I've had to face. We also found there were probably, 15 or 20 members' packages that went out for, they went out with stamps on them. And they were dropped in a mailbox, and apparently the U.S. Postal Service says if a package is over a certain amount of weight and they have stamps on them, they won't be delivered, which was news to me, but shouldn't have been news to me, because this is my business, has my name on it. So some of you are still waiting for your membership packages. We're going to get all this stuff taken care of tomorrow. We're going to send out emails with all the rest of it, and 1,000 apologies. So that's that, and I'd spend more time on it if I had the heart for it, because frankly, it's just been mortifying. But the best thing to do when you make an error of that magnitude, like I said, people were asking questions, and we found a folder 3 days ago with people asking about the DVDs. There were probably 25 emails in them. Some of them dated back to the end of October. I got those responses out today when I found out about them. So the best way to try and recover some trust and certainly some confidence is to sincerely apologize for what happened. Explain that I wasn't aware of it until I was, and then we're moving to fix it as rapidly as we can. But it is fully my responsibility. So we will make it right, and we'll just keep working until we do make it right. So if you were one of those people, everybody got their product later than I wanted it to be. Changing the tagline from smart conservative thinking to the common sense resistance took the product back. I thought it was going to take it back a week, 10 days. It ended up taking the shirts and everything back 2 months. But anyway, hopefully most of it's out, and hopefully most of you've got it, and we'll be talking to you members individually in the very near future. And again, my sincere apologies. So that's what's been on my mind for the last couple of days. Anyway, let's move on. So we've got episode 54 of the Stratosphere Lounge. Tried to concentrate more on 2014, because here we are in 2014. By the way, was anybody... I've had this thought many New Years now, but when it rings in 2014, I thought, 2014? It's like, I remember waiting for the year 2000. I remember since I was a kid, the year 2000 and the year 2000, the year 2000, it's the future. And now it's 2014. We're like 15% of the way into the next, into the 21st century. And it's the future. And where's all my future stuff? Where's my, I was talking to people at the New Year's party I went to, and I was kind of saying, I can't really talk, It's 12:30, got to get on my jetpack up on the roof, head over to my nuclear-powered submarine. I'm going to do a night or two at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, my little underwater pad, and then I think we'll probably just take a quick little jaunt up to our moon house, and spend the weekend up there, look down on the new year from up there, and nope, nothing. We have acid-washed jeans and the internet, and Miley Cyrus. You know the drill. Anyway, so let's get going. We're going to have a great year, and going to be starting the common sense resistance stuff this year. We did right at the stroke of midnight. I put up that Under the City post, which is kind of a written description of what I'd like that first common sense resistance video to look like. If you're one of those people that read it, then that's what I want it to look like. And if you are one of those people that read the Under the City thing, which is, as I say, a short story with what the video would look like, I'd like to just shoot that. That's what I really want to be doing this year. Is I want to be doing the common sense resistance stuff. By the way, the old man is going to be me, if you didn't figure that out. Set 15, 20 years in the future, I'm going to get a guy give me kind of a, like a silver gray buzz cut wig, and probably take the left eye out, and just kind of make it like gray, put a scar here, and maybe take one of these temporary teeth out. The new ones come in. These are they're plastic. It's a funny thing about plastic teeth, by the way. If you've ever had temporary teeth, and especially a lot of them, when you close your teeth like this on temporary teeth, on the plastic ones, they give a little bit. They flex. And it's a weird feeling. But the individual, these are several, like the front four, just a block, and the bottom six are a block, and they'll all be individual teeth when the permanent ones come in about 2 weeks. But when we shoot the common sense resistance thing, I may take one or two of those out, just leave them out, because there's nothing more horrifying than seeing, like, pretty bad teeth. Like missing teeth or ground down teeth, or it's amazing. I saw myself, as I said last week, with without any of the temps in, and you aged 100 years. I looked 100 years older with these tooth roots there. If I had implants, it would have been worse. Anyway, I may, when we get the makeup right for the old man, I may actually have a tooth or two are missing, and that's really embarrassing, but it's also really indicative. Because the thing about this common sense resistance stuff, I've said before, is even if you don't say a word about it, even if you don't say a political word and you put the whole screed aside and all that other stuff, if you have people leaving apartments that they're getting for free, and free healthcare and free food, and even though they're crappy, if they have to go out and have a chip ripped out of their arm without anesthesia, and then have to go and live basically in the sewers, pursued by drones and police and the political operatives of Omni and all that other stuff. If you just tell that story without telling a single word of politics, that somebody left comfort and went to hardship, then the question becomes, why would somebody leave comfort for hardship? And then you can show people something's worth leaving your comfort for. And just the act of leaving the comfort and going to the hardship says that for a small percentage of people, there's something out there that's more important than comfort, and that something is freedom. And one of the things that I think is going to be a very effective piece of psychology on young Americans today, and I'd love to hear from any millennials out there who are watching this. There's probably one of you. I think I'm doing this intentionally, just so you know. I think it's extremely attractive, not even attractive so much as fascinating, intriguing is the word I was looking for millennials to be told that, no, you can't be a part of this. This is too difficult for you. You don't have the chops for this. Nothing like it. And that's going to be the attitude of the common sense resistance to people who want to come off the grid. Nope. No, I don't think we can, you're not cut out for this. Because nobody likes to hear that. But I think millennials have always been told that they could get anything they want, do anything they want, instant gratification. And when basically you have people going off the grid and trying to find the common sense resistance is fun. And by the way, let me just chuck one little piece out there. It didn't make it to the story because it was a separate story. But one of the fun things about writing something like common sense resistance is and I learned how to do this in Aurora. And then I really got it worked out with Big Bad Problems, which is coming, believe me. I know it's like a dead channel, but I have to get the script finished so I can copyright it before I can really do updates. Aurora's been copyrighted since 2005. But I learned how to do this in Aurora, and I also learned how to do it with Big Bad Problems. And that is, if you're going to be a serious writer and an honest writer and a working writer, somebody's not lazy, you have to give the bad guys competence and skill, which means that you have to, if you're going to have a world, especially a world like this, an alternate future world, where people are on the run, you've got to paint out why they're on the run, and you've got to paint out why it's not so easy. So I had a problem here. What's going to happen with the storyline is that guy Jordan, if you read the Under the City thing, who's basically a young person who's basically a propagandist for the state. But when he heard the old man talking, the old man was saying a lot of things that this guy Jordan had been thinking about, not really thinking about leaving the grid or joining a revolution by any means, but just concerned about the state of things and had some ideas about third wave structure. So when this young guy Jordan is watching this thing on his TV set, and here's this old man who's, obviously taking a pretty tough life, talking about decentralization and freedom and localization and all this other stuff and deorganizing things, he's really intrigued, and the story of the common sense resistance, at least in first season, is going to be basically going to be this guy Jordan trying to join. So think about this now. Here's your problem. If you have a world in a world where everybody's being watched and biometrics are everything, and all communications are being tapped and harvested, this actually joining this thing is very, very difficult, because if you're going to maintain operational security for the common sense resistance, you can't just have a sign-up box. You're just going to be all kinds of agents, and there's going to be all kinds of infiltration, and everybody's going to be photographed. Everybody's going to be tracked. The people with the chips are going to have chips. They're going to be tracked. How do you bring somebody into this organization in a city in a case like that? It's a real challenge. And I thought, if the common sense resistance is going to not actively recruit people, but let's just say have a means for somebody to join, what do? They can't have an email address. They can't have a, hey, I'll meet you behind the barn. They can't do any of that stuff. So they have to have a way to get the message. So I actually had this thought that was actually kind of cool. And the thought is that there's going to be like a box, like a drop box, a physical drop box, and it's going to say a suggestion box, and it's going to have the Common Sense Resistance logo, and it's going to appear somewhere out, someplace not terribly, someplace that you can give a hint to. And then I figure it's not up to CSR. It's not their problem to cover the tracks of somebody who wants to join. But what I thought I would do is, how do you get contact? So if somebody left their address in this little cardboard box, I actually thought the best way to get that message out of there would be to have somebody write it down on a piece of paper, put it in this little box, and then I was going to have somebody fly a quadrotor in, one of these little four rotor helicopters, and literally pick the box up and literally fly it away. And when I say fly it away, I don't mean fly it into the sky. I mean fly it into a warehouse, and then duck and go down through levels and stuff. And that way, you've got somebody, the person who's flying the quadrotor has an eye on the site. You're assuming that the government has an eye on the site too, but he's not active. He's not really, you could say the transmitter for the quadrotor is active, but if he's doing it through an iPhone or something, right? Because a lot of these things are controlled by iPhones or iPads. This is why I've been in that under the city thing. I'm starting to develop some ideas. And by the way, if there are experts on this out here, for God's sakes, get in touch with me. But I'm trying to think. What I said a minute ago about being a good writer is if you want a good story, you have to give the bad guys that level of competence so that it's not easy. It can't be easy. In other words, I could just have these guys walk into a sewer and turn on the system, but that's not easy, and it's not dramatic, and there's not stakes. So they have to mask their heat signature, because they have to be able to get from place to place, and there's a 3-mile stretch or a 3-minute stretch where they have to be outdoors. They don't want to be outdoors. The drones are up there, but they've got to be outdoors. That's interesting. It's interesting that if you try to interrupt this signal, you can disperse the signal and have it sent through different ways, but you got to figure the bad guys are going to be trying to shut that signal down, which is what these nodes getting shut down are. All of these different ways they're sending the message to interrupt this signal, this pirate signal. They're sending it out 200 different ways, and the bad guys are shutting it down quickly. And so you can't send a radio transmission. You can't have these guys with walkie-talkies, because you've got to assume that there are people with direction finders and radio detectors that are looking for exactly that kind of signal. So how do you get a signal out there? And I think the thing that's really interesting to me anyway is, in this world, you have to hide in plain sight. The signal that controls the quadrotor has to be a smartphone, just a regular Wi-Fi. It's just got to come from something that is everywhere, rather than a dedicated thing. And you could set it up so that somebody's just basically set up a camera, and the camera is sending the Wi-Fi signal out from 2 different, 3 different, 4 different, dead links and so on, and get a little delay there, but that's okay. So it's fun, and it's fun to figure out how to get people into the system and how to get them to join, and it raises the stakes is what it does. It's not just something you go in and sign up for. So I think really what's going to happen is we're going to tell the story through this kid Jordan, young guy who was on the fast track for a dacha, right? Kind of guy who looked like he was being groomed for, inter-party membership here in America. By the way, another thing I like a lot about this common sense resistance thing that we're going to start working on is I really like the idea of working on the propaganda. I like working on the state propaganda. And again, you've got to do that with skill. If you make it heavy-handed, it's just not interesting and it's not believable. And so if you're going to do the state propaganda, you've got to make the propaganda good and believable. And that's fun for me and also disgusting for me. I'll give you a little example. When you see these government ads, I'm thinking the political party, there's going to be one party. I might call it Sunrise. I'm not sure about that. Omni is more of the surveillance mechanism. Omni is more like the Gestapo. It's not a coincidence that the Omni logo is a big O with an eye and converging lines and all that other stuff. It's going to look familiar to you. But this whole thing is just really interesting. And so if you're going to do the government propaganda, basically what I've got to do, if America goes socialist or communist, the American propaganda is not going to look like Soviet propaganda. I always thought it would, but it doesn't. And the way I know it won't look like Soviet propaganda is because we're hearing it now. The president gets out there. The president of the United States gets out there every day and talks about class warfare and talks about communism and socialism and inequality and all this other stuff. And he always wraps it in this Americana. You know, he'll put phrases from our cultural heritage into a blender, and he'll spit them out. And he'll say things like, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that this is a nation of people working together, not a nation of individuals, and we're a better country than that. And it's only because we all give our last full measure together that we function as so well as a collective. That's always been the way America is. It's just a flat-out lie, but there it is. And so if you're talking about the state propaganda is going to be, happy families of different races, everybody smiling, everybody getting along, and there's going to be an American flag on a porch, and it's going to look kind of rustic and kind of rural, and the guy will be very trustworthy, and he'll say something to the effect of, this country's most precious freedom is the freedom of speech. It's the First Amendment. That freedom of speech is a precious American freedom, but you don't have the right to hit somebody, and you don't have the right to hurt somebody, and you don't have the right to say things that hurt people. That's not America. America's a better place than that. We've always been a nation of people who cooperated and blah 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 blah. As a matter of fact, if you check the Constitution, it doesn't tell you that you're not allowed to say. That the Constitution doesn't say you have the right to say hateful things. Check it and see. American flag waving, sunrise, fields of grain, happy people. And so it's just like that, right? It's like you'll hear somebody tell you, basically, that the First Amendment is worthless because you can't use it to say something that people find hateful. And then they're going to say, the First Amendment doesn't give you the right to say hateful things. Read it yourself. Yeah, sounds pretty reasonable to me. Half of the population out there, if I phrase that argument that way, would buy it. The Constitution doesn't say you have a right to say hateful things. See how it works? The Constitution does not enumerate your rights, you see? That's the trick. That's how these people are going to do their propaganda. Their propaganda is going to be say, well, the Constitution's awesome and all that other stuff, but it doesn't say that you have the right to do this, doesn't say you have the right to do that. And because of that, people will buy it. But those of us that know the Constitution understand that the Constitution was never an assignment of your rights. The Constitution's founding principle was that you have these rights naturally, and the Constitution is simply there to say what the government can do. Not what you can do, what the government can do. You can do anything. The government is constrained in this little box. So you've got to set up a set of propaganda so that you justify why people are living like this. One of the points I'm going to be developing here, and this is an interesting point too, I think, is in this future world of the common sense resistance, you've basically got the entire population living as slaves. So the question becomes, if you are going to have an entire population enslaved without putting a gun to their heads, that means that they have to willingly buy the slavery. That you have to make people want to be slaves. You have to make them want to, because I'm sure there are a lot of exceptions that happen in the dark. But basically, what we're seeing before our very eyes now is that people are choosing to be slaves. I want free healthcare. I want free housing. I want free food. I want free transportation. Take it out of my taxes. Okay, so you're gonna work. The government's going to take your money, and they're going to give you all this stuff for free. That's what you want? Yes, we want the security of that. We don't want the all of the chaos and all of the uncertainty that comes with being actually free and not knowing where your money or your food or your health care is going to come. You have to go get it yourself. What? Most people just don't want it. They want certainty. They want security. And I don't think this is an accident. I don't think it's an accident why the economy is so bad, and I don't think it's an accident why they're spending so much money. People know that when things go south, they're going to turn to the government. Well, in the common sense resistance, things turn south. I was trying to think of a word for that, a term for that, the catastrophe, because this happens after the worldwide economic collapse. And what do you call that? Well, you could call it the worldwide economic collapse, I guess. You can call it any number of things. I thought about the fall. I thought about this. I thought about that. I thought about the catastrophe, blah, blah, blah. But then I realized if somebody had told you that there was going to be a terrorist attack on America and that buildings were going to come crashing to the ground, what would you have called it? Would you have called it, Black Tuesday? Would you have called it, this? Would you have called it this, that, whatever? What would you have called it? It turns out what you end up calling it is 9/11. It's just random. Nobody said we're going to, call this 9/11. No one said this is America's darkest day. No one said this Terrorist Tuesday. It's 9/11. What happened on 9/11? Just happened to be the date. So I needed something that would indicate a sort of familiarity with something that had happened about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years in the past, but about 5 years in our future. Less than that now, 3 or 4 years in our future. So what do you call it? And I decided to call it Red 17. I like the sound of that a lot. The old man just kind of mentions casually, look, we all saw a lot of stuff in Red 17 that nobody wants to repeat. Red 17 is got the ring of modern truth to it. It sounds like something you might call a year where everything burned and a lot of people died. Red 17 was chaos. Red 17 was the chaos that gave us the perpetual one-party state. And this unification is what I've read some analysis say that if the U.S. economy collapses due to the debt load, needless to say the rest of the world will go with it. We're still, some significant, 40% of the world population, just us, of the world's economy. So if the U.S. economy goes down, then everything goes down. And if everything goes down and nothing works, and ATMs don't work, and food stamps aren't delivered, and EBT cards aren't transferred, and food isn't moved, and then you're going to have Red 17. And what's going to be on the other side of Red 17, depending on how fast people move, is that the government will not just walk away. They want the power, and the people want food. It's not unreasonable. And so what I'm basically trying to paint is that after 2017, I might have said Red 18. Maybe Red 18. Somebody just said it was Red 18 in the story. If it was Red 18, I moved it back because I needed another year or two. Although Red 17 actually has a nicer ring to it, I may change it back. Anyway, if I'd said Red 18 in the story, fine. Let's just say I said Red 17 for the time being. Red 17 means in 2017, the world went to living hell. And our story takes place 10, 15 years after that, once the governments have stepped in. And one or two of the analysis I've read have said that if this thing happens, basically what will happen is that all of the governments of the world will essentially agree, because you can't just take the U.S.'s money supply out of it. If the U.S. defaults and collapses, then China's economy is finished and Europe's economy is finished. Everybody's economy is finished. But you've got everybody, there's still businesses, they're still producing stuff, there's still income, there's still all sorts of things. And essentially what I've read in a few places is that there may be a worldwide international consensus to just call a reboot and basically just say the debt is gone. All of it. All the debt's gone. Everybody who was holding paper as a creditor, there is no, you have no paper. It's gone. It's done. It's over. We're starting from scratch. Needless to say, there's a lot of problems with that downstream. If you renege on a $17 trillion bill, it's going to make people less likely to loan $17 trillion in the future, but that's somebody else's problem. In any event, the world of the common sense resistance is a stabilized world after the catastrophic events of Red 17. And I'm going to change it to Red 17 because it just sounds better than Red 18. One of the reasons I wanted to move it back a little was because, one thing I can't stand about certain science fiction movies that set themselves so close in the future is that you get to the point where you're either right about there or you pass it. I think Blade Runner set in, somebody here will know this. Is Blade Runner set in 2011 or 2012 with their flying cars and all that other stuff? I remember watching Omega Man, one of my favorite movies ever when I was a kid. And I think it came out in 1973. And you see on the calendar in Omega Man, it's like they're ticking off the dates in March, and the world ends on like March 12th or probably ended on March 15th for all I know, of 1975. And you want to keep the future out there far enough so it still feels like the future. But in this particular case, you want to keep it close enough so that it feels like it's, doable. So anyway, I've got all these problems on how I'm going to solve all these things, get all these things worked out. But it's really going to be fun. And I want to move into... I've been doing, green screen political commentary for 5 years now. I've been writing essays for 5 years before that. I've always wanted to be in the filmmaking business, and since I became involved in politics, I have wanted to... I have come to believe that the best way to get the message out there is through fiction, is through movies. That's how they got everything they got. Everything they got through movies and TV. And that's where the answer is. That's where I want to be. And it occurs to me that that the common sense resistance is where these Venn diagrams overlap. It's a skin for political commentary where I'm writing political commentary. But, and it's definitely me and my message, and it goes out through the political commentary networks that we've already set up and established. But at the same time, it is fiction. And while I'm in it, I'm certainly not the star of it. There's people with a lot more time, professional actors, and we may be able to get a couple of conservative outed professional actors in this thing. I'm quite sure I can get some of these names to make an appearance, which would add a little credibility. And so so this is a nice halfway house between political commentary and full fiction like Big Bad Problems or Aurora. Helps build up my director's reel, and also helps, just show that we can do it. So when we go out and raise the money for those things, it will help us a lot. So that's where I expect to be in 2014. We'll talk about, maybe we'll do another Common Sense Resistance episode in a week or two, something like that. Anyway, moving on. So let's take the questions and we'll call it a night. A nice 38-minute little rant here and there. We always like to open with a rant. And what episode would be complete with that one? So moving on. Apparently there's a guy named Tiemens out there in the comment section, and this is Zechariah Tiemens. We'll deal with the Tiemens in just a minute, don't you worry. And Zechariah Tiemens says, how do we stop our side from being suppressed in 2014, be it from the political establishment, voter fraud, or the IRS? And the answer is we don't. We don't stop our side from being suppressed. We can't. This is the idea of bamboo spears. You got to understand the cards that you're dealt. They have the air cover. We don't have air cover. We have to understand that these are the way that's the army we get, right? That's the fight we get. We're fighting a fight where our grassroots organizations are being attacked by a weaponized IRS. The press is not a headwind anymore. It's just a hurricane of bias. It's the audiovisual department of the Democratic Party. It's a lying machine designed to fabricate and to perpetuate a narrative, and it is unbelievably powerful. If the media was reporting something that looked like the truth, the country would vote like Kansas or Oklahoma. They give these people 30 points at the polls. Without question, 30 points. So we just have to accept it. Zechariah, we have to accept it. We're not going to get a fair fight out of these people. And we can whine about it and complain about it all we want to. I don't mean to turn on you, because I whine and complain about it about much as anybody. I whine and complain about it for a living. But it doesn't matter. If it turns out that things could change, I think they can change. I think we'll see some change. That means our job gets easier. Our job can't get harder. We can't get any harder. It can't be more of a headwind than we're fighting right now. It's just not going to get harder. It's just going to get easier. So right now, I would say, in answer to your question, how do we stop our side from being suppressed? We don't. We're the suppressed side. We're the underdogs. We're the people that are lied about. We're the people who are the enemy of the people. We're all those things, and we just need to own it. And the purpose of the common sense resistance is to not only own it, it's to use it as judo. It's to go to people and say, well, what are you guys about? You wouldn't understand it. Really? What do you mean? Try me. No, not only wouldn't you understand it, you don't have the stomach for it. You're not tough enough for it. You can't take it. I believe that's true. I really do. I really do believe it's true. So we're stuck with it, and we can complain about it, which does us no good. We can accept it, which is better, or we can use it to our advantage, which is even better. And the way you use things to your advantage is to use psychology on people. And you basically, there's nothing more appealing to a person. This is the fundamentals of advertising, fundamentals of psychology. If you really want somebody to buy something, or if you want to make a product feel like it's a complete prestige product, or if you want to make a location like a nightclub feel like it's exclusive, the way to do it is by not letting people in. And if you do this long enough, you set up a sense of value. You set up a sense of perceived value because they can't have it. They can't have it. No, you're not smart enough to be part of this common sense resistance. You're not smart enough. You're not tough enough. Go back to your free stuff and talk about what an awesome guy Obama is or Omni is. And then you get the people you want to get. You get the people who, by the way, I think that's virtually everybody under the age of 25. You tell somebody under the age of 25 they can't be something, you're not smart enough to be part of this, you've already got them. So moving on, here's a non-Tiemens question. Bill Thompson says, do you see a future where America can produce power grids based on thorium salt reactors, finally fulfilling the post-war dream of unlimited, inexpensive energy? Or have the energy-phobic environmental minimalist extremists poisoned the political climate irrevocably? I've got a little more reading up to do on thorium reactors, but I have a pretty good background in nuclear power, I would say, for a civilian. There are already self-contained reactors that are either on the market or on a market for someplace that's not the United States, where basically what the thing is it's, I don't know, maybe the size of a school bus or something in that general vicinity, and it's vertical. It's pre-fueled. I forget what the output is. I want to say it's 25 megawatts, might be more, might be less than this. Enough to power a neighborhood, a couple blocks. And they can't melt down. They don't get hot enough to melt down. They're completely self-sealed. You bury them out back, and they provide power continuously for 25 or 30 years, and then you refuel them or you chuck them. You basically have all the power you want to. If you want to, that old line about Dad saying, I'm not air conditioning the outdoors, or I'm not heating the outdoors. It's like, why not? It's kind of like the internet, right? Do you remember when, I remember, before the dot-com boom in the 80s, I'm sorry, in the 90s, and they laid all that cable, all that fiber, and all those communication lines. Do you remember when there were things called long-distance phone calls, where you would say things like, okay, well, I got to go, it's long distance? I remember that. I had a little romance going in with somebody in Colorado. I was in Florida back in 1993 or 94, I guess. I think I had a $600 phone bill one month. And so comes a point where when the internet has really arrived, I remember when the internet first arrived in my head was when somebody said there's this stuff called, it was the forerunner of Skype. It was a couple of things where you could talk on the internet. And that's when they said, you're paying $19.95 a month or whatever. And if you want to talk to somebody in Colorado or somebody in Thailand for that matter, if you want to have a headphone on and talk to them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just chat with them as you go around and make your coffee, it won't cost you any more than it would if you don't say anything to them at all. That's flat rate, very inexpensive communications, what we have today. And with these thorium reactors, or these fifth generation nuclear reactors, they cannot melt down. Right now we have reactors, nuclear reactors that were designed in the 50s and 60s, and they were designed in such a way so that all of the uranium they were designed in a very, well, first of all, we just learned how to do it, right? I mean, we didn't even know how this stuff worked until 20 years earlier than that. So we would put all the uranium, I'm extremely simplifying here, but we'd put all the uranium in one place and guard it. And then it would get very, very hot because it had to get very, very hot to run these gigantic, huge generators, and everything's centralized and all the power lines and all this other stuff. And so it cranks this power out, and then the reactor had a number of mechanical, what's the word I'm looking for? systems, I guess. So that here's how we know the reactor is going to run effectively. But if there's a problem, then this other system kicks in, and if there's an even worse problem, then another system. So there's a number of backups. But, and this is a critical point, the reactors we have out there today do not fail safe. Fail safe was a great movie, and fail safe is a term known to engineers, and I'm not an engineer, but I hang out with enough of them. Fail safe means that if the thing goes down, it goes down safe. In other words, if the reactors that we have currently in the world providing nuclear power were fail-safe reactors, when a tidal wave came, or if the cooling system failed, or if the mechanical system failed, or if somebody makes a wrong button push on a console someplace, it fails safe. The reactor shuts down. In other words, you don't have to shut the reactor down. You have to be working constantly to keep the reactor going. The second anything goes wrong, it just shuts down. It goes safe. It fails safe. And our reactors aren't like that. If the reactor shuts down now and that cooling water is not provided over that core, or if something mechanical happens to the control rods or anything like that, then they don't feel safe. Now, somebody just wrote that naval reactors fail safe, and I don't doubt that. War and Peace said naval reactors fail safe. You know, we talk about nuclear power and how dangerous it is and all this, so on and so forth, and you talk about Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island and then was it Fukushima in Japan. These are 3 failures in over 50 years, 60, 70 years. But we've been sending men around the oceans of the world underwater. Think about this. We have 100 men sleeping in steel tubes several hundred feet, 700, 800 feet below the surface of the water, moving through the water at 20 knots or 30 knots if they're in a hurry. Probably they're moving through the water at 3 or 4 knots most of the time. But nevertheless, for 50, 60 years now, we've had our best men and women in steel tubes underwater, sleeping on top of nuclear reactors, and no one's had so much as a headache. So, of course we can do this right. And I wish the Navy, frankly, would run our civilian reactors. But the point I'm trying to make here is it's not a question of engineering when you talk about these thorium reactors or pebble bed reactors. What you're talking about is if everything goes to hell, if the power goes out, the water goes out, and everything, the reaction just simply doesn't get hot enough to melt down because you're not putting all the uranium in one place. You're staging it. So here's a little area where the water gets hot, then here's a little area where the water gets hotter, and here's an area where it gets a little bit hotter. But it's not all in one place. And so no one part of the reactor ever gets so hot that if it goes down and takes all kinds of things with it. And by the way, let's just talk about the 3 big accidents, right? 3 Mile Island, there was some venting of detectable amounts of radiation. No one's seen any spike in cancers in Pennsylvania that I'm aware of. A lot of people tried to make the case, but it's not there. I think somebody said one person had a heart attack or somebody as a result of 3 Mile Island. It might have been, what's his name who said that? But basically, no. Fukushima, you had that thing rated for a 9.0 earthquake, and it took a 9.6 earthquake. And the thing that's utterly astonishing to me, and really revolting, frankly, is that how many people died in that tsunami in Japan? Was it 16,000? Was it more than that? 20,000, 25,000 people died in the tsunami? And everybody's obsessed with the nuclear reactor where nobody's died at all. I mean, this was the catastrophic worst-case scenario, and it exceeded the boundaries of the worst-case scenario, and no one's died from it. And furthermore, from the limited I know about the Japanese meltdown, one of the reasons that it got as bad as it did was because they tried to save the reactor. They tried to save the reactor. Instead of flooding the reactor at the beginning, they tried to save the reactor. So that was a situation that never developed. And at the height of the radiation output, somebody basically showed me a chart and said, if you were to get the people out of the town within a 10 or 20 mile radius and fly them to Los Angeles for their safety, they'll take more radiation on the plane ride to Los Angeles than they would have taken by being there. And this is the kind of things that just are devastating arguments. But these new reactors can't do that. They don't fail that way. And of course you have Chernobyl. But what was Chernobyl? Chernobyl was engineered by socialists who didn't care about people. If you look at the history of the Soviet Union, entirety of the Soviet Union was spending resources they didn't have and engineering skills they didn't have to keep up the appearances of being equal with the West. So, if we have a space shuttle, they have a space shuttle. and ours flew hundreds of times, and theirs flew once. Edward Teller was who I was thinking. Thanks, Dave. If we have a nuclear submarine called the Nautilus, then they'll have a nuclear submarine. But the difference between our nuclear submarine and their nuclear submarine is our nuclear submarine was designed to protect our people because we value our people. And when they realized that we had a nuclear submarine, they had to have one for propaganda purposes. And their first nuclear submarine killed 2 entire crews. They just killed them all. It just nuked them. They put another crew in there and nuked them again. And all of the Soviet stuff is this way. All of it. There's some. I don't think there's enough evidence for me to really believe this, but there's some evidence that somebody may have tried to go into space before Gagarin and didn't make it. Everything, there are entire icebreakers, nuclear-powered icebreakers that are encased in concrete in the Bering Sea because they nuked their crews. And so you look at Chernobyl, and it was a reactor that didn't have a containment structure. I've made the argument before, if you think about nuclear power in the same way you think of a fireplace, a fire, if you think of nuclear power as fire, then that's like having a fireplace in your living room, but no brick. It's like setting fire in the corner of your room and wondering why something went wrong. When we try to have fire in our living rooms, ladies and gentlemen, and we don't want our house to burn down, we take precautions against fire, and we put the fire in a place where the fire can be contained. And we call that containment section for the fire a fireplace, and it's made out of bricks so it can't burn. So if you light a fire in the middle of your room or in the corner, and then the room catches fire because you didn't light a fire in the fireplace, then you might say this is not superb engineering. But that's what Chernobyl was. And not only did not have a containment, they had operating procedures that they knew about, and these are Soviet operating procedures, which are not very good to begin with, but they ran a test that they knew was against the procedures. And so why did they run this test? Well, because there was a political operative at Chernobyl who worked for the Communist Party who wanted to show his bosses that he could move up in the world, and they were told you will do what you know is going to blow up this reactor because the Communist Party said so, the Communist political chiefs said so, and maybe it won't blow up, but if it doesn't and you don't go along with this, you are going to Siberia. And so every single thing that's wrong with socialism is what happened in Chernobyl. Political people making engineering decisions, horrible, cheap, awful reactor designs designed to basically just ape the West when they did nothing like the technology to do this right. Lack of money to do it right, lack of training, all of that you pretend to pay us and we'll pretend to work kind of motivation on the part of the staff. Many of those engineers were terrific guys, and for God's sake, so I'm not misunderstood, the people that went in there after the explosion, the 20, 30 guys who died, within days because they just kept going up there to shovel this radioactive slag off the roof, those people are about the bravest people that you can possibly find on this earth. So they're very brave people, and theoretically, the Russians and the Soviets were always extraordinary. But engineering-wise, I'm not impressed. In fact, if you look at the look at Soviet aircraft. I've had this conversation on Stratosphere Lunch not long ago. It looks like they're made by apes. I mean, the rivets and the structure and the metalwork and the interiors and the kites, it's awful. It's just awful. So, to answer the second part of your question, Bill, these energy-phobic environmentalists are winning, and I think you're right. One of the problems I have with Aurora, frankly, one of the reasons the people behind Aurora get into so much trouble is because they're trying to use a nuclear rocket. I cannot imagine a world where we could test a nuclear rocket or launch one. I don't mean burn it. I don't mean use it to get into space. I mean put one in there. We launched Galileo and Cassini, both of which are too far away from the sun to use solar panels. They had small little pieces of I think plutonium radioactive RTGs, radiothermal generators for Pioneer, and I think more powerful little mini reactors for Cassini, certainly. And I remember when they launched these things, these lunatics were down there saying, prevent the launch of the Galileo warhead, nuclear warhead going into space on the Galileo mission. So, yeah, politically, we got to get it sorted out first. I think the answer is, frankly, you find a state or something like Texas, maybe, and you just go in and do it, right? You just go and do it. You put in a Put in a thorium reactor or a self-contained uranium reactor or something like that, and you power the neighborhood, and you have a swimming pool on top of the reactor, and everybody's just like happy, and off it goes, and it works. Just do it. How much is your electricity? We don't pay for electricity. What do you mean you don't pay for electricity? No, it's free. We all, the community invested the $25 million or whatever it was, or $9 million or whatever for the reactor. We air condition the outdoors. We either run the AC or we don't run the AC full time because it's generating that power, and we either burn it off or we don't. But it's like it was the case I was making with communications. It's like long distance is free now. Energy's free. If energy's free, if you go to these things as you're suggesting, Bill, with these reactors, if energy's free, essentially, then what can't you do? You can, on the very short term, you can light your house, and if you want to keep your house at 80 degrees in the winter and keep your house at 60 or 50 degrees in the summer, who cares? And by the way, for you carbon footprint people, there's no carbon footprint even. So you have all the power you want to, but then you can start getting into the kind of things that I grew up as a kid with, right? Then you can start saying, well, we live in Arizona and it's dry out here. Well, if you have unlimited energy, then you can pump seawater in from California. That's incredible. It requires an incredible amount of energy to do that. Yes, it does. Who cares? Why would you pump seawater into Phoenix? Well, we'd pump seawater into Phoenix so we could desalinate it. Do you realize how much energy that would take? What difference does it make? We just build them. We just build them and do it. And next thing you know, you're growing, cotton in the desert, right? Or rice. You could do it. You could do it. There's no reason we can't. And I'm beginning to think that the world is turning for these progressives. New York City just got a communist Sandinista for a mayor, and I think they voted for him. He won in a landslide. I cannot wait. He sounds serious to me, this guy de Blasio. I hope he does everything he wants to do, and I hope he does it in a month or two. I want New York City to get the socialism that they voted for. Couldn't happen to a nicer group of people, frankly. It's a rebellion against the fact that Bloomberg was the worst politician ever to have an R after his name. He's a gun control fanatic, tell everybody what they can eat and not eat kind of Republican, conservative. I think when de Blasio's done, they're gonna grab Giuliani out of whatever rest home he's in and take him back on their shoulders and say, could you please just do what you did before? Anyway. Thanks for that question, Bill. Alo Konsen says, feminism and ugly women, correlation or causation? I want to take that question only because I feel like I've been really, really hard on women in the last couple episodes. We're talking about, girls in these, knocking out big guys in movies and how dangerous I think that is mostly for girls. And I had had a very interesting, very, very enlightening comment in the Under the City story I did. Said it's written from a male point of view. Is not very female-oriented. I don't think it's going to be very female-oriented, to be honest with you. I don't know if you can make it both. I think to the degree that you make something like this more appealing to women, it becomes less appealing to men. But in any event, I feel like I've just been a little hard on people. And when I was saying things like paramedics and women paramedics and having to send firefighters to do the carrying. I don't want to sound like I don't understand what's going on here. I personally know women helicopter pilots in the Army and the I know pilots in the Air Force, women pilots in the Air Force. I've been working for women on and off for most of my adult life. And needless to say, the great productivity boom of prosperity is largely due to liberating half of the population of the world, at least in the West anyway. Half of the population in the West is in the game now. So I wanted to take this question on feminism and take it seriously because even though it's a funny question, I kind of agree with Clavin on this one, which is a rare admission on my part. I'm not a feminist to the degree that I think that women deserve special treatment. I think that people should be treated equally. I think if people do the same work, women say they get less pay, but if you look at how that statistic of women are getting paid less for the same work, it's not really the same work. The jobs are not as dangerous. The hours aren't as long. So that doesn't hold water. But needless to say, how can you possibly say that you're in favor of a man getting paid more money for the precise same job? And that argument is, has anybody made that argument in 30 years, 40, 50 years? So feminism, like environmentalism, like everything else, is one of those past the top of the bell curve kind of thing. It was all about great things when it was about equality, and it was valuable and useful when it was about eliminating barriers to people that shouldn't have barriers. And to that degree, I thought feminism was great. But you can't really make the case now that, 7 out of 10 college students are women or more, where all of these programs for girls are everywhere, where boys are just dropping out of school left and right, and where masculinity and maleness is being demonized and medicated out of the population. I don't think you make the case that girls and women are being suppressed anymore. I think you can make a pretty strong case it's just gone, as everything else, the opposite. The real racists in the country today are black people. Certainly the racists in the media are black people. And the sexists in the world today are not men. The sexists in the world today are feminists. They're women. They're the ones who are making everything about sex and asking for set-asides and asking for special treatment and demanding they be treated as equals. And when you criticize them for being equals, crying and whining about, how mean it is. So I just want to say that I'm very crystal clear about this. I think that virtually every job out there has to have job requirements. And those job requirements are different from job to job. The job requirements for a jockey are different than the job requirements for a sumo wrestler. And my feeling is that if you meet the job requirements, you should be able to have that job. There's no caveats about that. None. No caveats about that at all. If you meet the requirements of the job, you should be able to do the job, and I'd fight to the end for that right and that freedom and that opportunity for anybody. Where I have a problem is where you start changing the requirements of the job for politically correct reasons, and doing that, you end up making life not only miserable for the people who've been excluded, you make life miserable for the people you're lowering the standards for as well, and people die because of it. They die. I don't know how this is so hard to figure out. Honestly, if you're talking about combat troops, what are the requirements of combat troops? Well, the requirements of combat troops are the ability to suffer a lot of hardship, the ability to carry a fair amount of packs and weaponry, ability to hit a target, the ability to show courage. Women show courage in combat. Women have the ability to hit a target. Women have the ability to move with packs and so on. But the question becomes, is one of those requirements the ability to carry another comrade out of the way? Is there a strength requirement? And I think there is. And I think most people who are out there on the point of the spear would probably tell you there is. And no one can stand here and make the argument and say that women are as strong as men. It's just not true. It's just not true. They're not as strong and they're not as fast. That's not a criticism of their courage, not a criticism of their skill. It's not a criticism of their desire. It's a fact. If you find women who can, in fact, do the number of pull-ups and carry the same amount of dead weight in a fireman's carry that a man can, then that woman should be able to do whatever she wants to do. You also get into some issues with morale, and that's a little dicier. That's not nearly as clear-cut. And you also get into, with women in combat, I think, you also get into a genetic... I'll be the first person to admit I don't know what I'm talking about here, okay? Let me just get that straight. But my feeling is, my guess would be, that if I was in a actual combat unit, that's like a special forces unit or something, and one or two of those operators were female, speaking for myself, I feel I might be inclined to take risks to protect that person that I may not take to protect other men. I don't know if that's true or not. I get that feeling that is probably true. So, you got to factor this in too. But it's a touchy issue. But I did want to take the thing on feminism just because I really felt like I was going a little too far in perception in the other direction. I can't tell you the respect I have for the women I've worked for. Some of them have been great. Some of them have not been. And I find that they've been great or not great on the basis of individuality, just like I find the same thing about everybody else. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. I hope that clarifies things. There are certainly some very ugly feminists, but there are some good-looking ones too. And I'm sure if you had the anti-feminist crowd you could do a little cherry picking there too. So with that said, that Stacey Dash, who I've met several times, who I like very much, is, in my opinion, significantly better looking person than Hillary Clinton. I didn't lead with that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But if I had to pick. Marianne asked, do you think we will ever know the truth about who President Obama really is? That's followed right behind by Kcz Lind, who says that I believe Dinesh D'Souza gave us a great look into who Obama is and what his plans are in 2016 Obama's America. Yeah, so I agree with the answer, actually, Marianne. I feel like I know the truth about who Barack Obama is. There are some things in there I'd like to know that I don't know. Look, I think the birth certificate, the new one, the long format birth certificate, is bogus. I think it's phony. I don't think it's real. But here's my problem. I don't see any evidence that he was born anywhere else. So it's one of those absence of evidence does not equal evidence of absence kind of thing. I think that the birth certificate they trotted out for us is fake because they didn't have it or they couldn't find it or whatever. But looking at the history of Barack Obama and his mom, Stanley and Dunham, and Barack Obama Sr. and all that other stuff, it seems likely that they moved from Mercer Island, which was a known, Mercer Island high school was called Little Red Schoolhouse. They moved to Hawaii because mixed-race marriages and mixed-race children were more accepted in Hawaii than anywhere else in the United States. The connection between Obama's grandfather, that would be his mom's father, and Barack Obama Sr. seems pretty good. And frankly, that story is so, even the stuff they admit to is so awful that it just seems to have the truth about it. I think that's probably what happened. I think she went to Hawaii, got pregnant as a form of protest, just to protest, because it was it was just it. It was a form of protest for her. You look at Stanley Ann Dunham's career, her life is just a series of protests against the establishment. Her father, Barack Obama's grandfather, is a strange man, and his relationship with Frank Marshall Davis and everything else, very odd, very strange. But I don't have any evidence he was born in Kenya. I don't have any evidence he was born in Canada. So I live in both those worlds. I think the birth certificate is probably fake. I think he was probably born in Hawaii. Maybe the birth certificate is authentic. But that doesn't concern me. What concerns me is wherever he was born, he was raised by Frank Marshall Davis, who is a known communist. Grandfather said, we need a black role model for my half-black, half-white grandson, and I choose Frank Marshall Davis. And Barack Obama says in Dreams from My Father, which I think was written by Bill Ayers, I read a very, very in-depth, compelling analysis that indicated Bill Ayers probably wrote it, and I think that's true. But nevertheless, Barack Obama approved of the story that basically said, when I was a boy, my granddad and Uncle Frank used to take us to these dives, these speakeasies, and they would drink whiskey out of glass jars, and I would sit in a room and look at cartoons on the wall which were pornographic images of Disney characters. So while your 7 or 10 or 15-year-old kid is going to Disneyland, the President of the United States is sitting in a bar illegally looking at, Mickey doing Goofy. And you've got an abandoned child, and you've got a dad who is serial alcoholic, a serial womanizer, a bigamist, illegally a bigamist. I've seen some fairly reasonably convincing on a surface level analysis that says that Barack Obama looks nothing like Barack Obama Sr., looks nothing like him. I don't know. I'd like to know. But I know enough about this guy to know that most everything he's done is a lie. I know that his resume for 16 years said that he was born in Kenya. I don't necessarily believe he was born in Kenya. I think he wanted people to believe he was born in Kenya. I think that's the whole thing about Barry Soetoro. He always wanted to appear exotic. And so you will see, I think he got his, I think a lot of his college was done on, a lot of his college scholarships were for foreign students. I don't think there's much question about it. But on the other hand, it's nothing but questions, right? Because we don't know. So anyway, most of you know the background on this guy. I guess the heart of the question is really, Marianne, is will people ever learn about it? And I don't know. I gave up on the press ever coming around voluntarily. And where I am now is, I think the only thing that can happen now so that the American people would hear it is either the Obamacare catastrophe continues to get worse and the bloom is off the rose. People who never questioned him before, and it wasn't just Obamacare, Syria did him enormous damage. Going to war with Syria did him enormous damage with his base. And people don't trust him anymore, and his numbers are now in the 30s. And those are the published numbers. His real numbers are probably in the 20s. So people are starting to ask questions, and his support is drifting away. It's the same thing with Bush. We saw it with Bush. And the question is going to be, and by the way, Bush's approval numbers were in the mid to low 30s when he left office because the press was bashing him. Obama's numbers are already in the mid 30s with the press propping him up as much as they possibly can. If people knew what they knew about him, he'd literally be run out of the White House with torches and pitchforks and dogs in the middle of the night. So I think the only thing that I can say, Marianne, is if the catastrophes continue to roll in and he is perceived as irredeemable, that the people in the media look at his poll numbers and realize that they are being mocked by their own readership because the public is ahead of the media in terms of their understanding what this guy is, then we may see them starting to cover this. Now we're seeing a little tiny bit of it with Benghazi, right, where the New York Times, the biggest liars in the news media today, where actual journalists are doing actual journalism showing that the New York Times basically just invented this story about Benghazi. That's a landmark when somebody's calling out the New York Times and setting the record straight. So there is a world where this is happening. And the reason I'm so excited about 2014 going forward is I think 2014 is going to be far, far, far worse for him than 2013 was. I think 2015 is going to be worse than 2014. I think 2016 is going to be worse than 2015. And maybe it's wishful thinking on my part. Maybe it is. But I am coming to a place where I am beginning to see like distant lightning on the horizon, beginning to see a world where the final 3 years of the Obama administration will be so bad for him personally and so bad for progressives in general that we will look back on it and say that the destruction that he caused was worth it to get this outcome. I know it's a bold thing to say, but I'm seeing signs that this thing is unraveling big, and that's why I hope de Blasio does all of his Sandinista reforms in a month. I want New Yorkers to wake up in February and think, what the hell happened to our city? Oh, you mean the guy you voted for? The communism you voted for? It's here. Congratulations. Go outside. Take a carriage ride around Times Square, around Central Park and think about it. Oh, you can't anymore. The horse carriages aren't there anymore. So we covered this more on Into the River, which I'll post tomorrow. Alo Konsen has another question. These are voted up by you, the people, not by me. He says, are the Tiemens brothers actually sock puppets for Scott Ott and Stephen Green? Many people have asked whether they're sock puppets for me, whether I've invented the Tiemens, Zechariah, Isaac, and Joshua. I know because their names are on here. Because this is my way of picking the questions I want to pick. I don't know who the Tiemens brothers are, to be honest with you. I think we know less about the Tiemens brothers than we know about Barack Obama and his clan. I do know that that I don't choose the questions, that I do select them by likes on Facebook. And I have to say that we have been doing lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of Tiemens brothers questions, but we've been doing them because they've been excellent questions. Excellent questions, and I don't want them to get feeling, creeped out about this, because we're all having fun with this. It's just a remarkable, remarkable run of questions that have gotten the thumbs up on the site. Now, we may find out if we have somebody out there who's really deep into the NSA, we may find out that the Tiemens brothers have a small army of people that they bring to the website to uptick their questions for nefarious purposes that are beyond human ken. But I suspect that's not likely. So I just think that, since you asked if they're sock puppets, I don't know who they are. I assume they're brothers. I'm trusting like that. I've always been trusting like that. But whoever they are, or he is, or she is, they're doing something right because they're getting a lot of positive feedback, and the questions are terrific. Anyway, so that's Alo Konsen, who asked the question before the previous one. Is he a sock puppet for the Tiemens brothers? Verdict's out on that one. So let's see. Our next question comes from a person named Isaac Tiemens, who says, on Sean Hannity's radio show recently, Neil Bortz declared that social conservatism kills Republican campaigns. Can Republicans win if they jettison the social conservatives? It seems to me that you can't build a winning coalition by the process of subtraction. Me neither. Couldn't agree with you more there, Steve Green. Isaac Tiemens. We have this constant thing where the conservative side of the country is torn between the libertarians who don't want any religion and the social conservatives who are very religious. And one side is saying, ditch the other side and we'll win. The libertarians are saying, if we can just get rid of these religious nuts, then we'll be fine. And the social conservatives are saying, if you could just drop these pot-smoking hippies, then we'll be fine. But I don't think either of those is the answer, frankly. I think we need to have both these very large, powerful tractors in this garage of ours. So how do you reconcile this thing? I think really the question is almost self-answering in a way. I don't think you jettison the social conservatives. I think the way you build a winning coalition is by saying to the social conservatives, you're conservatives. You understand that government should be limited, right? So why don't we just say, let's get the government out of our lives, and then you can win your social issues where it belongs, in schools, in churches, on the streets, and in person. Can we agree that we want to get government out of our lives? Yes. Well, then let's just do that. That's something that the social conservatives and the libertarians can agree on. And then you can fight it out in other areas. So there's that. But I think really the simpler way to answer this question is, how do you get the libertarians on board? Well, how about if you had a Republican Party that was about getting rid of big government rather than having a slightly less big government than the progressives, right? Really, the way you bring two of these things together is to run a conservative party. And we're missing libertarians are not joining. Libertarians are not joining. That's a coming question. I got it confused. I'm sorry. I see what's going on here. You know what? I'm just gonna leave it at what I just said. I think you have to say to the social conservatives, social issues need to be fought in social arenas. We're talking about the government. We all agree the government should get out of our lives. So let's get the government out of marriage. Let's get the government out of healthcare. Let's get the government out of education. Let's get the government out of all this stuff. Can we all agree on that? Yes. And then what your kids are being educated about is a fight we can have on a school district by school district basis, or on a school by school basis, or a house by house basis. I think the social conservatives, generally speaking, would be happy to say, just leave us alone. That's what the libertarians want too. It shouldn't be so hard to put them together. We just need to have somebody come out and say so. Bill Thompson says, or asks, I should say, if enough people realize the emperor has new clothes, what is the absolute best case scenario you realistically see over the next 2 years? It's actually 3, right? He's got all of 2014, he's got all of 2015, and he's got all of 2016. Is the pendulum set for a massive swing, and how much momentum will it carry? I think the best case scenario is if Barack Obama continues to struggle and fail and make progressives look bad, because he's making them look bad. He's making them. He could be evil. They weren't happy with the drone strikes, but it gave him kind of a rush. It's kind of that Hillary Clinton rush. We came, we saw, he died kind of thing. They all want to be gunslingers deep down inside, these big old pacifist liberals. They all want that toughness. So his progressive base may not have liked Syria and Libya and drone strikes, but it's got a certain machismo, sort of a rugged sort of a thing that they kind of, it gives them a chance to. It's like they get it. They pull up to a trucker at a gas station or something, and the guy says, "Hey, can you move your car up for me so I can get some fuel?" And they go, "Roger that." Give them a chance to have a little swagger that they don't normally carry with them. So they put up with that, but incompetence and stupidity is unbearable to them. It's unbearable for these people to be considered stupid, because the entire essence of modern liberalism is unearned moral and intellectual superiority. This is how you show people that you're smart without having to be smart. Who'd you vote for? Barack Obama. Why? Because he's smart and I'm smart, and only stupid people vote for Republicans. Everybody knows that. So when Obama fumbles things like this badly, and when people start mocking the website and mocking everything else, then it gets them where they live. And that's why what Jay Leno says is so important. If Jay Leno and the rest of them start mocking their God, that's not the same as criticizing their God. They can take the criticism. It's the mocking they can't handle, which is why we need to mock them relentlessly. They cannot handle the mockery. They can't. We get mocked every day. How many times do we get mocked in a day? We just toughen up and take it. They can't mock these people. You start saying, not only are you stupid, but you're stupid and immoral as well. And here's why. There are no progressives after that. No, there's the hardcore, socialist communists, the Alinsky guys, the Chicago crowd, but they don't have any following after that. So I think the best case scenario, realistically, is if they continue to look as incompetent and as thin-skinned and as bumbling as they do, and the press decides, you know what, it's an embarrassment to us now. Everybody hates him. Everybody's saying, gee, we made a mistake. Gee, he lied to us. Gee, this is not what we thought we were getting. If the press gets to the point where the press decides to do their job, then the table will tilt almost faster than you can keep track of it. Once you reach a point where the press feels like it's not only okay to attack him, but they almost have to, because of the next liberal messiah, they're not going to change their philosophy. But if they get to the point, for instance, where it starts looking like now it's time to start prepping the battle space for Hillary, so we're going to start making Obama look bad because it's got to be one or the other. If people start digging around and then all of the other stories that we talked about earlier start to come out, then Obama could end up with 10%, 15% approval, well, I suppose 11% approval rating, right? 15% approval rating. But as Dinesh D'Souza says, he doesn't care. If Dinesh D'Souza is right, he doesn't care about that. What he cares about is being the man, the one, the individual, the one person who brought down the most powerful empire in the history of the world. Dinesh makes that case, and I'll tell you what, evidence is fairly compelling. Paul Sullivan asks, how do we convince libertarians to vote for Republicans? I half answered this earlier. I'm sorry, I'll get a little clearer here. Many of them seem content to throw away their votes when a vote for a conservative Republican would help us get away from big government. Well, Paul, the way we get libertarians to vote for Republicans is to actually give them a conservative Republican who would help us get away from big government. And libertarians are not going to vote for Republicans as long as it's Mitt Romney or John McCain or any of these other guys, or Christie or Bloomberg. Right now, the choice in a presidential election is between a big state socialist and a slightly less big state socialist. Give them a candidate and they will come. I think we've been talking about this a lot. I suspect we'll get more into this in the mechanics of it as we get into 2014, and we'll swing hard for this in 2016. Somebody has to unify conservatives and libertarians. And somebody has to just basically say, we have these overlapping circles, these Venn diagrams that overlap 95% of the time. Why don't we, let's not talk about what we agree on, because we agree on just about everything. Why don't we just have a handshake, a gentleman's agreement, on the stuff we don't agree on? And like I said in a couple of episodes ago, the person who gets the most votes gets to be president, and then the next person gets to be vice president. Libertarian candidate gets to be the vice president, whatever. And if the libertarian gets more votes, you have a runoff, right? You have the Republican candidate, you have the or a conservative candidate, Republican candidate, and a libertarian candidate, and you have a runoff. And whoever gets the most vote is president, and whoever comes in second is vice president. Shake hands, take the vote. There's a lot of ways you can do it, but really we agree on so much of everything that the idea that we're splitting our vote is just awful. And watching what happened in Virginia and how stupid people were when they gave us a libertarian candidate who was endorsed by one of Barack Obama's bundlers is smart play on their part. It's evil, but it's smart. And we just can't have that. We just can't have that kind of division. We can't possibly hope to win. I will not vote for Chris Christie. I'm telling you right now, campaign against him. I will campaign against him. I said the last time, I said, give it one more try, vote for Romney with the reservations about him not really being conservative. And I did. And I said, I'm not going to do it 3 times, and I won't. So anyway, it's going to start shaping up in 2014. We'll have an idea, and then we'll get into 2016. Mary Lou Mawson on the comment section just wrote Ted Cruz. I'm going out to introduce Ted Cruz in January in Texas. Ted and I have actually formed a bit of a friendship. I've been to 5 or 6 events with him, not that many, 3 or 4, and we really hit it off. And I ran into him in Fort Lauderdale a month ago at the airport. He came up, talked to me, and just tapped me on the shoulder. Hey, Bill, how's it going? I said, good, Ted. He said, did you hear I was using some of your Star Wars stuff in the filibuster? I said, that did get back to me. So I would love to work with Ted, and I plan to work with Ted. And we've discussed me coming out to Washington and talk about polishing up the message, because I don't have to tell Ted Cruz about conservatism. Ted Cruz understands conservatism. I might have some skill in rhetoric I might be able to help him with. But he doesn't need to be taught these principles, and he certainly doesn't need to be taught courage or political courage. He knows what he's doing. And Cruz is a smart guy, and he's a nice guy. He's a genuinely nice guy. In fact, if I was working with Ted Cruz for his presidential campaign, one of the things I'd have to do first is I'd have to get him less nice. You'd have to make him a little less nice. You'd have to inject a little Rick Perry into Ted Cruz, I think, to get him right in the sweet spot. Because when the president of the United States enters a room, you've got to feel it. It's got to be like, oh my God, that's the guy with a nuclear football. Perry projects that. Ted can do it, but he needs to do more of it. How Barack Obama ever got elected, I will not know. I've never, ever gotten that alpha male sense off of him. But Ted Cruz, you're arguing in front of the Supreme Court. You're a smart guy. And I argued in front of traffic court. And we both won, so we have that in common, the virtual president and the next president. Somebody said Ben Carson there. I've been to several events with Ben Carson, and I see Rand Paul as well. Just be honest with you guys, I've been to several events with Ben Carson. I've been to 1 or 2 other events with Rand Paul. Ben Carson is one of the most brilliant men on the face of the earth, but he does not have any political charisma that I can see. He's brilliant, and I've been to a lot of his speeches, and he has a tremendous story, but he is not a politician. And Rand Paul may have the best bona fides of anybody in the game, and maybe it's just him, but Rand Paul also has a real strong charisma deficit in a room. I've been in a room full of people, in a circle, me and 6 or 7 other people, and I had to ask myself, is that Rand Paul? And it was. And look, these are things that can be fixed, right? It's not hard to teach people how to be better on camera. It's not hard to teach people how to be more assertive. It's not hard to teach them how to deliver speeches. What's hard is to give them the convictions and the understanding of the principles in the first place. That's what's hard. It's much, 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 much easier to make a Ted Cruz who's virtually there, or a Rand Paul into a viable candidate in terms of the media and in terms of the wrapping and the shell. That's very easy compared to taking a perfect candidate who really has the smile and the teeth and the media presence and giving him the principles. That's what's hard. And besides, if you try to go with Plan B, these people get elected. They ape, I should say, conservative principles or whatever, and they know that they should sound and look like a conservative and say these things. They get elected because they're a great candidate. They never had the principles to begin with, and they get to Washington and they just completely change because all they wanted was to get to the office. They don't care about anything beyond that. Oh, LED failure and then recovery on the network of my Hue lighting system. So you don't have to teach Ted Cruz anything about conservative beliefs. Ted Cruz can teach me about conservative political beliefs. What I can help Ted Cruz with is I can help him get these beliefs down to bite-sized messages that you can deliver and that make sense and that are defendable, and then you can teach him how to defend these ideas by mock debates and stuff. So anyway, Nick Sylvie, wants to know, how was my New Year's Eve? It was my best New Year's Eve in 10 or 20 years, honestly. Best New Year's I've had in a long, long time. I actually spent yesterday feeling strange, and I realized it might have just been alcohol poisoning, honestly. I mean, I was just toxicated. I was toxicated. And I'm better now. But yeah, I had a wonderful, really, 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 really wonderful time. And I've always taken that kind of importantly. I don't make a huge deal out of it, and I don't think that my year is locked into the kind of time I have on New Year's Eve, but I have often realized that New Year's Eve is a measure of where you are kind of socially, financially, economically, and if you have a really good New Year's with really good friends and have a great time, it's a good way to start. So it was a good year, beginning of a good year. 2013 was a very transitional year. It was a great year, but transitional year. And this year now we got the website up and we're getting those last teething problems sorted out, and we're starting to get into a whole new kind of messaging, and really feel like we're hitting our stride here. What I really need now is a staff and some resources, and I think I've got the means to get both of those. So, yeah, it's going to be a great year. Thanks for asking, Nick. Joshua Tiemens asks, Bill, what do you think of the idea of a Tolkien-themed Stratosphere Lounge? And followed immediately by Mark Dudridge, who said, not sure we need it, as Bill seems to almost always get in at least one Tolkien reference. LOL. I was just going to say that myself. I said, why have a Tolkien reference when a Tolkien episode when virtually every episode we talk about Lord of the Rings? But strangely enough, I was talking about Tolkien with Jeremy and Jonathan earlier today about all of that stuff. And I think I might like to do one, actually, to be honest with you, just kind of get the whole thing out there. We're talking about Theoden today, and we're talking about this idea that I wrote in Shards about giving up power. Having power offered to you and giving it up and walking away from it as being the one thing that Tolkien sees as making you worthy of the power. And Jeremy pointed out that was George Washington. Then he pointed out something interesting. We talked about a couple of other Tolkien characters who are interesting. Denethor, who's the father of Boromir, and Boromir himself, both of whom want the ring. But unlike the forces of evil that want the ring for evil, both Denethor and Boromir want the ring in order to do good, and that's very interesting. And what we basically came to see was that if the people that turn down the ring, like Gandalf and Aragorn, just turn down power, if they're Washington, then Boromir and Denethor are Lincoln, because Lincoln took power. He took a lot of power, and he took power for what he thought was the right reason. The question is, do you ever give it back again? I think Lincoln actually, the country did return to habeas corpus and all that other stuff, but it's an interesting question. So you could do Lord of the Rings for 2 hours without batting an eyelid. So I might like to do one. As a matter of fact, what would be interesting would be to put it up to the questions, right? It's a Tolkien episode, then take the questions. I hadn't really thought of it that way. I thought it'd have to be kind of like a monologue. Yeah, let's maybe do that. And somebody in the comment section I just noticed said, why don't you do a flying episode? Well, as it turns out, I got a couple of these boys right here for Christmas. These are GoPro cameras, as you've probably seen. They shoot 1080 HD video. They send a Wi-Fi signal out that means that I can look on my iPad mini and see what the camera's seeing. I'm going to mount one of them to the front of the landing gear of the Skyer. We're going to just bolt it on to the front landing gear strut. And then they also say the suction cup is good to 150 miles an hour. And I've got one of the very few airplanes that wouldn't do 150 miles an hour if you cut it up into little pieces and dropped it out of another airplane. So I'm going to be shooting, I might shoot it this weekend or soon. I ordered from Sporty's Pilot Shop, as it turns out. Actually from Aircraft Spruce and Specialty Company, for those of you purists out there. I ordered a very simple little device that splits my radio communication signal, sends it out to a microjack, which means I can record not only what I'm saying through my headsets, but also what the various tower and approach frequencies are saying and ground frequencies and stuff. So we can actually listen to it, and I am going to do a flying segment. I'm going to basically take a flight from Van Nuys Airport, go over the coast of Malibu, come back, land at Santa Monica, and then come back and land at Van Nuys. And we won't do it in real time. We'll edit it, obviously. But I'm certainly going to have one camera facing forward, seeing what the airplane sees. And I'll probably have the second one mounted on the cockpit, looking back with a wide angle so you can see me and the canopy and the wings and the tail and all that other stuff. We'll sync them up. I may do a third one and put it out on may get a third camera, put it out on the wing strut and have it looking sideways. That would do it. So a flying show is coming, definitely. I'm looking forward to that. And I got the GoPros so we could do Common Sense Resistance also. We can bang these things around and just stick them on rocks and take them in natural lighting and, look primitive, and it will be primitive. It would be kind of cool. Video camera is a Class A controlled substance in the future. If it's not linked into your cell phone and censored. Just a couple more. Anthony Cazillo, excuse me, asks, in 2014 and beyond, will the stigma of Obama's failure be contained to him as president, or will progressivism take the hit? In other words, although the progressives are startled, will they be back in greater numbers with Hillary in 2016? I don't think so. I don't, Anthony. I think they're really going to pay for this. And I think they're going to, and we're not done paying for this. Everything with Obamacare is just, this is just the overture. Americans are used to having their employers pay for their insurance. The bulk of their insurance for the bulk of their families is paid for by corporations. When that employee mandate kicks in, they don't know what the numbers will be. It's not 6 million people like are now out of insurance. It'll be 40 million, 50 million, 80 million Americans out of insurance. And it's different than the people that are independently insured. I was one of those people who had their policy canceled, and I had a policy and I had to go buy a policy, and then it was canceled and I had to go buy another policy. But for the people that have it paid for by corporations, or most of it paid for by their businesses, when these people lose the fact that their company is covering a lot of their healthcare costs, they're gonna come after these guys with pitchforks and dogs, and so the only way that doesn't happen is if they keep kicking the can down the road, which is what they've done again and again and again and again and again and again and again. But even progressives are starting to understand that Barack Obama is waving his imperial finger at so many of these individual things in the law that the law is essentially becoming useless now. If Obamacare gets knocked down the road again and again, we won't enforce this, or, well, you know what, on second thought, we won't do that, or maybe, then it becomes a joke. It's a laughingstock. And so the only way they can protect themselves from the reality of Obamacare is to keep delaying Obamacare. They've delayed it for 3 years already, 3.5. And pretty soon it'll be delayed so much that people just say, all right, even its supporters will say, you don't even have the guts to defend it or implement it, so let's just do a redo. And if it's a redo, you'll have the worst of all worlds. And we'll actually have a victory for conservatives only because we couldn't figure out a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. This is economics at work, and not even Republicans can save progressives from the consequences of economics and gravity. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a great year, and I think that not just Obama, I think progressives are going to pay for it. Hillary is going to run to the left. She's already starting to run to the left. Pocahontas, who should not, how did she get elected anyway? Elizabeth Warren is going to be the champion, the woman champion of the progressive left. And she's younger than Hillary. Hillary was at the inauguration of Mayor Sandinista, and she's got 3 years before she starts. She's got at least a year, if not 2 years, before she starts campaigning. And she's not looking good, and she's not looking like her heart's in it. And, you put Hillary Clinton up against Ted Cruz in 2016, you've got Barack Obama and John McCain on the stage together, except that this time it favors us. We got a young, handsome, charismatic individual who appeals to a large ethnic section versus an old white person. I don't know. I don't think Hillary has a chance. I may be proven wrong, but I don't think she has a chance. Yeah, I think it's going to bleed out over all of them, Anthony. I think they're going to all pay a price for this, and that's why I've been saying this for years. If you can't stop it, then don't slow it down. If you can't stop it, make it happen as fast as you can. The American people wanted their socialism. Give it to them. You voted for it. Great. Well, we didn't know we'd have to pay for it. And that's the classic line of about Obamacare, right? That woman who said, I was all in favor of Obamacare until I found out I had to pay for it. Well, you do, so enjoy yourself. Joshua, what was that last name? Tiemens? Is it Tiemens? Joshua Tiemens asked, Bill, you grew up during the 70s and 80s. What's the classiest car from that time in that period? A Chevelle? A Stingray? It's not a Chevelle. Might be the Stingray. I loved my 1970 Camaro very much. I thought that 70 Camaro was awesome. But I have to tell you, that old 72, 73 Corvette, the real curvy one with the kind of upswept ducktail kind of thing, and that big fiberglass looking thing. I used to, every time I'd go past one in a school bus, I go, oh, Corvette. I'm not a supercar guy. You really want to go to Iowa Hawk if that's the case. But the 70s and the 80s were great. And cars were, you could work on a car. And then I actually changed spark plugs on a car. Now they're just computer chips. But I'm not really a car guy. when I started in the Miami Planetarium, I was 16 years old. I started when I was 13, but when I was 16, I could drive. I had a 1970 Camaro. Two friends who had 1967 Mustangs, which were, I thought, the best year for the Mustang. Another friend who had like a 1970 Barracuda. So we were all doing the muscle car thing, and and we didn't look at them as like muscle cars are into racing or anything. They're just cool looking, fun cars, and you look back on them and they had just so much character and so much class. Our family owned, in 1972, I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was 72. In 1972, my dad bought a Mercury Marquis station wagon. And then the Arab oil embargo happened in 1973. And then you had to wait in line for gas. I remember that. I'll never forget that. Wait in these long lines, and in Florida they had like, alternate days. I guess most of the country had that. But some people would drive from Miami to the Turnpike, to the first rest station on the Turnpike, which was, 30-minute, 40-minute drive, just to be able to get gas on a certain day. So my dad had bought this 1972 Mercury Marquis station wagon, and then when the Arab oil embargo hit, he told me, and he was so angry. He was about as angry as he could be, I think, because he was so frustrated about having to wait for the gas. And he told me that he had bought the car with the worst fuel economy of any car ever made in America. Apparently, that's what he told me. People out there would probably be able to tell me it was wrong in a heartbeat, but apparently the Mercury Marquis station wagon, the big electric blue Mercury Marquis station wagon with the hidden headlights and the fully retractable seat that would slide forward, up and down, and tilt back and forth, and got 7 miles to the gallon in the city. It drove like it did. You could launch jets off the hood of that car. That thing was so damn big. Gigantic hunk of steel. Now that power steering, some of you are old enough to remember this kind of power steering. Power steering on my new Camaro is absolutely astonishing. I bought that car for its looks, but it's so well made. That 2012 Camaro is incredibly well made. I've driven it hard for 25,000 miles now. All the oil change and all the tires and all that stuff's on time, and looks like it's brand new. Looks like it just walked off the lot. But there's not a rattle. There's no play. There's nothing. The thing is rock solid. It was rock solid the day I bought it, and it's solid. But that Mercury Marquis station wagon, you'd get that baby up to any kind of speed at all, and that power steering would, when you wanted to turn that car, in order to turn like a right angle, you had to turn the wheel like 3 times, and you'd be, once that car got about 60 or 70, even though it weighed about a battleship, it was 2 or 3 metric tons of American steel. Once those cars got to a certain speed on the road, they just start to float. You could feel the wheel was just kind of doing this, just kind of, you're just kind of like there, and there's no road feel. You're just, thank God for the Florida Turnpike, because it goes, to the horizon straight and flat, and then it cranks 6 degrees to the left, goes to the horizon straight and flat, and then it cranks 7 degrees to the right, and it goes to the horizon straight and flat. So we had that gigantic, huge car. After I lost the Camaro, I think I got a GTO briefly. I didn't like it as much. My friend ended up trading his Mustang and got a Maverick. With the bucket seats up front are the most uncomfortable seats ever made for human beings. We did a trip up to Connecticut in that Maverick, and I'd rather be waterboarded than sit in that car. Those things were just excruciating. You used to have to load 50 pillows into that car just so you could get an hour. It was excruciating. And then right then we had a lot of those horrible cars. Horrible. It was American car making at its worst. We had a 73 Vega with the aluminum block engine, and that engine just melted. It just blew up, after we'd had it for a year, and we had a Sunbird, and God, some of those cars were ugly. I kind of liked the Pacer because it kind of looked like a space car, and the Pacer was different. But AMC made the ugliest car I've ever seen with my own eyes. I mean, theoretically, there may be an uglier car, but the AMC Matador was the ugliest car I've ever seen. That car looked like it crapped its pants. The back end of an AMC Matador is the most hideous thing we've ever done. And they were crap cars, and they ran like garbage, and the fit was terrible. They just fell apart. So I don't know. I don't know where the car culture went. My friend, Phil Trick, had an amazing little car. Everybody else was going in the big muscle car kind of thing. and he bought a Mazda, I want to say an RX-3. It was one of the very first Mazdas ever. It was this tiny little white sedan. It looked like a Datsun. Little white Japanese sedan, tiny little, perfectly, it looked frail even for a little Japanese sedan. But there was something about the torque on that RX, on that Mazda engine, and he called it the Millennium Falcon, because that thing, you pull up next to like a Vet or a Firebird or something, and you'd get off a traffic light, and he's got all this roaring kind of displacement, but this car was so light and it had so much torque, just, and it made that humming sound when it went just off. It was kind of cool. Somebody mentioned the Gremlin. I thought the Gremlin was kind of cool too. I thought kind of like somebody pinched the car off at the back end. It's like somebody squeezed the toothpaste out too quick or something. But it was not a great time for automobiles. But you know, the Camaro, the 1970 Camaro was still great, and it didn't get good for me. I lost all interest in cars until they rebooted the Camaros. I thought every year the Camaros got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, and then they did the reboot in 2010. That's the first time I ever in 35, 40 years, the first time I went, ooh, that's a car. I want to have that car. I didn't much care about cars. I cared about airplanes. And Joshua Tiemens goes on to say, seems everyone back in the day was loyal to one clan of car or another. It was the battle of cults. You're either a Chevy guy or a Ford guy. It's certainly true. Much like the Glock versus the 1911 is today. P.S. What do you think of the Glock versus the 1911 anyway? Glad you asked. I'm a 1911 guy. My dad had a 1911 nickel-plated 1911 issued to him as a second lieutenant in the Army. That weapon was in our house from as long as I can remember. And it's just the definitive badass-looking pistol. 1911, that square, heavy, badass-looking gun. 1911A1. I have a 1911A1, brand new one from Springfield Armory, the rubber grip and the raised combat sights, and it's got a little the beaver tail thing to stop you from getting your hand bitten by the slide mechanism if you're too stupid to put your hand in the wrong place, which I often am, and the ambidextrous safeties and stuff. And it's a 100-year-old gun, and it's fabulous. I know a lot of people who are professionals who love the Glock. I know a lot of guys who are gun lovers who hate the Glock. I don't like the Glock. I don't shoot for a living, and I don't expect that I would have to put so many rounds downstream that things like reliability would be a big issue for me. Although reliability is the number one quality to have in a gun, no question about that. So the factual answer of it is I like the 1911 because I can afford to be picky about the way it looks. If my life depended on it, I might choose differently, although there's a lot of people whose lives do depend on it, and they love the 1911. And a lot of guys didn't like the 9mm conversion when the Army went to the 9mm. There's a lot of guys out there that like the bigger round. The 1911's an immortal gun. They'll be making that forever. And a lot of people are looking. I saw the, the SIG 229, is it the Elite? It's a 45 caliber ACP thing. It puts a big old bullet down there and looks kind of square like a 1911, but it doesn't look like a Glock. It's kind of like the dream child of the 1911. If you took the best looking 1911 ever and the most reliable Glock, you put them together, and it makes the Sig Sauer. Is it the? I want to say the 229, the Elite. I saw somebody do a little video on that. That's a good looking weapon. That's really kind of cool. Might have to get one of those one day. But yeah, I'm a 1911 guy. I saw a video. Some of you gun fanatics, enthusiasts may have seen this. It's from, I want to say it's from World War II-ish, and it's a sergeant, I think, and he's on a shooting range, and he's prone, and he's got a 1911 with tracer rounds. And all I can remember is seeing this guy like running and jumping and rolling. He's like, and these tracer rounds coming out of this 1911, and they're going everywhere. Last thing I'll say about the 1911. My dad was telling me about that gun. Lots of dads tell stories. I don't know how true this is. Got the ring of truth to it, for me anyway. He basically said that this gun had I was asking about the gun and why I liked it. He said it's got a very powerful bullet, Billy. It's a big bullet. It doesn't move very fast, but it's got a lot of power. And I said, well, what difference does that make? And he told me that the 1911 was designed so that if you were in a trench, and he kind of, drew this picture out for me in my mind. So let's imagine you're in a trench, and there's a German with a bayonet coming over the trench with a rifle, a bayonet, and he's going to jump on top of you with his bayonet and kill you. My dad told me, I don't know if this is true or not, but my dad told me the 1911 45 was designed so that if you put a couple rounds in the guy, it'd actually blow him over backwards. And whether that's true or not, it made an impression on me. I like the idea of somebody like coming, like almost falling on top, and he would let gravity do the work, and just having a pistol round that would just like, displace him, give him a form of thrust, I guess, and impart some momentum and inertia into his system and get that mass going in the other direction. Anyway, we'll say one thing about the 1911. When you fire that thing, you know it, and puts out a muzzle flash the size of a pizza box. And I don't think you have to hit somebody twice with one of those rounds. And certainly if it fired in their general direction, most people will agree to disagree and walk away. Anyway, Welter Almeida says, third time's the charm. And he got the question in during an episode with the Tiemens. He says, what is your take on the current pace of technological advancement? Do you believe that the technological singularity is eventual, possible, or unlikely? Part B, if it were to happen, what do you suppose would happen to the human race if robots or AI created their own nations and created better things and had a better economy than us? That's a great question. It's probably a whole episode right there. The singularity is a term used originally by sci-fi writers. It's kind of coming into sort of, tech geek kind of acceptance. And as I understand it, the singularity is this. The computers are getting faster, and it's somebody's law, Goodwin's law, or Godwin's law. Maybe that's the Nazi thing. It's somebody's law. Processors are doubling in speed and halving in price every 18 months or 2 years, something like that. And this is continuing. And so now processors are becoming, obviously when you have something that's really powerful and you double it, I know it sounds odd, but the more powerful it becomes, the bigger a deal doubling it is. It's an exponential thing, obviously. So we're now rapidly approaching the point where computer memory and computer processing power is approaching the human brain for $1,000. We're not there yet, but we are within sight of, within a decade, of being able to buy the kind of processing power that the human brain has for thousands of dollars. Now, having the raw processing power doesn't mean you have the software. Consciousness is very ephemeral. We thought we'd have artificial intelligence 30, 40 years ago. It's much, much, much harder than we thought it would be. Much, 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 much harder. And yet, my little phone, when I got the iPhone that had Siri on it, I've had an iPhone for a while now, but when I got Siri, I was so impressed by Siri's Moore's Law, thank you guys. I was so impressed by it that I tried to stump Siri. And I had this thing in my hand, and I just started thinking of questions. Now, that's not intelligence, don't get me wrong, because it's not intelligence, but it's something. And I would say, Siri, how far is Alpha Centauri? And it would tell me. I say, Siri, what does a camel weigh? And it would tell me. Siri, how far is it from where I am now to Bangkok, Thailand? And it would tell me. Siri, who was in the movie Patton? And it would tell me. And just by asking the question out loud, it's really absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. So the singularity is defined as the point beyond which computer intelligence surpasses human intelligence. And once computer intelligence surpasses human intelligence, it's called the singularity because, like at the event horizon at a black hole, once you get past that, there's no way to tell what's on the other side. It's unobservable and it's unimaginable. Once you get through the singularity, you're on the other side of the black hole event horizon. You simply can't predict anymore. So we can make general predictions about the future because human beings have never changed. That's why we're conservatives, right? Because the flesh, this part, this stuff is at least 1 million, maybe 2 million years old in its present form, and it changes very, very slowly. So we're wired, our biological hardware and our biological software is tied into the hardware, so it doesn't change very much or very rapidly. But when silicon intelligence becomes higher than human intelligence, so think about this. You're designing a computer, and you design a computer, and that computer gets smarter, and you design another computer, gets even smarter, and so on. When you reach a point where you design a computer that is smarter than you are, that means that that computer can design the next computer faster and better than you can, which means that new computer comes online faster and better, and it's even faster and better than the one that preceded it, and off it goes. So explosively, exponentially. Now these things are building their prototypes and improving them faster, and every time it does a new generation, it has the capability to do even more, and it just, off it goes. And that's when human history changes. It becomes, as Chris Files just points out, it becomes a one-way passage. It's a gate. You don't come back. Once you get through there, you don't come back. Alan Baker just said information isn't knowledge. That's correct. But when you have enough raw look, I'm a guy who the first software I ever wrote was in BASIC, Apple BASIC, I think. And the first program I ever wrote was a solar system simulator. And I wrote a program. It's the first code I ever wrote in my life, ever. Was something that would generate a solar system. How many stars? 1, 2, or 3? 1. What type? Give the spectral class. What was the orbits? How many planets? What was the distance to the planets? What were the orbital periods of the planets? What was the life zone? What was the average temperature of the planet? Just randomly selecting all this stuff. What was the axial tilt? What was the rotational period? What was the mean high? What was the mean low? I wanted it for a science fiction game for Traveler. And I was just cranking out these solar systems. Now, I didn't know enough of the math to be able to do it right. I hacked at it with an axe, right? I made furniture with an axe. I just set up these little pachinko balls where things, just have a random number generator and it would just fall into these things. I didn't have the elegance of the equations. So I just hacked at it and faked it. But you can accomplish a lot when you do that. And nowadays, with the processing power being what it is, you can get pretty close to something that looks like intelligence and knowledge. And beyond that, nobody knows. So I'll tell you one thing. There is one thing that is very advantageous for us as humans, and that is there's this thing called the power cord. And you have the ability to shut down the power. And the second you shut down the power, these things go dark. That's good for us. It'd be much tougher to kill, be orders of magnitude to kill every human on Earth, easier than it would be to destroy every computer, because we're self-reliant, we're self-sufficient. We can go out and eat grass or raise food or eat animals if we have to. Computers can't do that. Computers are dependent on a technological society. You can create a world where you can have the computers crash and kill millions of people. You send jets into the ocean and send the electricity down and all the other stuff. But if it came down to an actual war, electricity is not the common state of mankind, of nature, rather. The world is not naturally electrified, but the world is naturally illuminated by the sun. And humans can live out in the sunlight with the rest of the animals and plants, and computers can't. Nice to know. Now, if you're talking about a spaceship or a moon base or something, then you got some troubles. But right here on Earth, you're in pretty good shape. So I'm not too worried about it, and I'm not even really too worried about how they would behave. Maybe I should be. You've seen futures where when they become more intelligent than us, they become malignant, as Hal. And Hal, the great thing about Hal was that Hal's, in 2001, Hal's tragic flaw was vanity. Hal killed those crew members because of vanity, because he couldn't bear the idea that they'd made a mistake. The 9000 series has never been found to be in error. We are, for all intents and purposes, incapable of error. I don't think I'm ever really gotten to really understand that until just this moment, that really it's vanity. And since you wanted a Tolkien reference, that's what the Ring of Power is too, by the way. The Ring of Power is the ring of vanity. It's the ring of being in command. It's bending others to your will. It's making judgments on other people without being judged yourself. And that's what Hal wanted to be. I'm a servant of the crew members. It's my pleasure to work. I enjoy my relationship with Commander Bowman and Commander Poole, and I find them stimulating, and I enjoy playing chess with them, even though Hal's having to circle the block 450 million times and read every single piece of literature ever recorded in between the blink of Bowman's eyes while he's playing chess with Bowman. But it's vanity. It's all vanity. And Hal kills the crew because he can't bear the idea that he made a mistake. He can't bear the idea that he was made to look bad. He was given conflicting mission priorities, and he had to lie, and the lie got caught, and he was embarrassed. Really, is what it was. He was embarrassed, so he killed everybody tried to kill everybody on the ship. I don't know. I don't see that really likely, and I'm not sure this world where they become kind of like an AI, kind of these guardians of humanity, and these, it's almost like we're manufacturing our own angels. They come and do the dirty work, and they take care of us, and they feed us, and they clothe us and carry us. I actually think that's much more likely than hell. This idea that we're going to make a robotic and artificially intelligent servants that care for us, I think it's much more likely because it's much more market-driven. I mean, there's a market for that. There's reason to build them that way. And if some of these things started going off and killing people, they'd take them out in a heartbeat. You'd shoot a robot before you'd shoot a dog because a dog's an animal. That's an interesting question too, which really is certainly a question the size of certainly at least a whole episode. But one thing that's interesting to me is if you had a choice of smashing a computer with a hammer or shooting a dog, a sick dog, let's say, that was in pain, there's not a person here who wouldn't smash the box, right? But what happens when that box has a level of intelligence and sentience and self-awareness greater than the dog? Then what? What's going to happen when these artificial intelligences have actual intelligence? I actually don't feel for them. And yet, strangely enough, you do, because we're wired for this. And I made this comment a long time ago. If you haven't seen it yet, I want to say it's Boston Robotics, the big dog. They're terrific. And these guys have created many, many robots, but they've got this one robot which is basically the size of a small horse, like a Shetland pony or something. And it hops, but it's got 2 legs in the front and 2 legs in the back, and it hops. And this thing will jump up hills and run up hills and deliver, supplies to troops and stuff. And when they were first testing this thing, because it's constantly just constantly trying to find its balance, and then it starts walking along forward and stuff. And you see it out there, and it has a very odd effect. And I think the first trifecta I ever did was about this. It has a very bizarre effect on you because you can see without question it's a machine. It doesn't have a skin on it, nothing. You see all the servos, you can see the rubber, you can see all the electronics, all of it. It's obviously a machine, and yet because it's got legs, it has a biological imprint on you. It looks like it's alive. And I watched this thing running, and I thought, man, that's really incredible. And then one of the guys who built it, presumably, walks up to this thing as it's running or standing there, and he kicks it as hard as he can. And he did it to show its ability to recover its balance. So he kicks it, and the thing goes staggering off, and it puts its legs out to get its balance, and it absolutely does it in exactly the same way that an animal does because it's using the exact same algorithms. And so when he kicked that thing, it really pissed me off. I mean, I felt this kind of aggression towards this guy I would have had if he'd kicked a dog or a horse. I was like, hey, man, and that's when you get into the really, really, really interesting psychology of it. Is like, I started to treat that machine as if it were real. And I think I said on the trifecta when I first came up with this, we first talked about this topic years ago now, I think I said, you might want to Google this. Not Google it. Look for it on YouTube. Some of you will know what I'm talking about. IKEA did an ad. It was one of the best ads I've ever seen, ever. It was a remarkable ad. Remarkable. Very simple. And basically, I want to talk about the power of storytelling. I should put that in the, I believe I will. I'll put it in the Singularity in the next day or two. But here's basically what it is. It was a 30-second commercial. And what it was you're in an apartment, and it's a nice warm apartment, and it's woody. It's like a loft in New York City, and there's books everywhere, and it's this cozy little place. And it's one of those old-fashioned like gooseneck lamps or something, a plastic lamp. And you see this lamp, and then the woman turns it off, and then you see her unplug it and wrap up the cord, and she puts it in the garbage can, and then she takes the garbage can out in the rain, and the lamp is on the top of the garbage can, and there's a shot from the street, and you see the lamp, and it's turned off, and it's raining on the lamp, and up in the window, it's cold outside and dark, but up in the window is this little island of light and warmth and family. And you see up in the window, you see the woman put a new lamp on the table, brand new lamp, and the old lamp is sitting out there in the rain, and it's abandoned, and it's left alone, and it's lonely, and it's sad, and it didn't deserve this. It did its job, and all this other stuff. And you just, because of the music and the lighting and you humanize the lamp. You humanize the lamp, and you feel awful for this lamp. It's probably Christmas or something. This lamp got thrown out in the garbage, out in the rain. They got a new lamp, and you feel awful, awful, awful for this lamp. And this Swedish guy just walks into frame, right when you're right at peak emotion, walks right into the frame, and he goes, "What? It's a piece of plastic. The new lamp is much better." And it's like, yeah, it's a piece of plastic. It's a piece of plastic. I won't get it. Anthropomorphize, whatever. We read humanity into things that aren't human. Looks like Guatemalan Water Snake put a link in the comment section here. That's probably it. If you look at the logo for Pixar, it's a lamp. It's one of those gooseneck lamps. Not far at all from this. This is my Hue lamp here, but I mean, really, it's pretty much just one of these, right? It's just one of those. Oops. And Pixar's logo is the lamp because the first short film that Pixar did was the lamp hopping around and behaving like a creature. And the genius of that logo and the genius of that short film was Pixar was able to make you feel as if this inanimate object that is as far away from a human being as it can be was in fact not only real and alive, but a character with personality and characteristics that you liked. You wanted it. You wanted to have one. You identified with it. It was a friend. There were a lot of problems with WALL-E. I saw WALL-E, and WALL-E is remarkable in terms of the emotion that this little tin thing generates. And I mean, the first half of WALL-E I like very much, and the second half not so much. But the first half of WALL-E, these Pixar people they suck the air out of your lungs with this horror when you realize that this cockroach has just been crushed. You think they've humanized a cockroach with this toaster. They've humanized them both so much that when you think that this toaster has accidentally crushed this cockroach, you lose your mind. It's so traumatic. This is a good thing to close on. You need to understand the power of that and why we do so badly in the larger cultures. The left understands this. The left has the skill set that can make you just suck air through your teeth in anxiety over the fact that this mechanical metal box has just run over a cockroach and it's the worst thing ever. These people can make you sob in front of hundreds of other people, can make grown men sob while they watch a beach ball sail away on the ocean. The power of being able to do that, the power of being able to tell a story and dialogue and music and lighting and acting where you're sitting there crying because a beach ball is floating away on the ocean. Wilson, I'm sorry. Now, part of it is feeling for the man, but part of it is like, you feel like you lost a friend when this beach ball goes away. People who can control this understand the power of human psychology, and they've done enormous damage. And I think the last thing I'll say before we close this episode is when Joseph Stalin is anecdotal, but I've heard that when Joseph Stalin saw his first movie, he didn't go, "Wow, what a great film," or anything. He said, "This is the greatest machine for controlling people's minds that has ever been invented." He understood it instantly, and the Soviets always did. They always understood it. And we don't on our team, so we'd better. That's why we need to go out and tell some movies and have people crying over our beach balls. Yeah, we'll just edit that out. Have people on our team, people on our team doing the right thing. Have people taking a box cutter like this, and cutting open their forearm without anesthesia and having a guy with a forceps sterilized and, rubbing alcohol, reach in and pull out a chip the size of a, grain of rice or something, and sew it up without anesthetics. And that act is the act of setting yourself free, and now nothing's free anymore. Now that you're free, you don't get anything for free. You tell those kind of stories, people will pay attention. They really will. And they'll start to ask themselves, what is worth ripping a hole in my arm, pulling this thing out? Now I don't get any more food, I don't get any more housing, now I don't get any more health care, now I don't get, now I can't shop, now I can't go anywhere, now I have to hide, now I have to run, now I get tracked down like a dog, now I have to live in gutters with the rest of these people that have made the same decision. Why would you do that? We'll show them. And this is the year to do it, too, 2014. So ends episode 54 of the Stratosphere Lounge. Pushing, I don't know what it's been lately, man. We've been over 2 hours several times. At 2 hours and 12 minutes now, so not quite 2:30, but we're there. We are really looking forward to getting into 2014. And as I said before, I know what do we have right now? We have 200 people, 200 plus, a little over 200 people watching this, but about 2,000 watch on YouTube. So if you're one of those members who suffered genuinely appalling customer service at my hands, I have to tell you, I was handing that off to other people so that I could concentrate on shoveling coal into the content machine, but it is my responsibility, and I found out about it very recently, but we're going to fix it. So there you go. Thanks very much. Next will be episode 55. We'll get to it next week. And as always, so grateful for everything for you guys, and I think we're going to have not only a good year for content and us, but a good year for the country and a bad year for the bad guys, because they're overdue, and so are we. So as always, thanks for joining us, Stratosphere Lounge, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.